Nous avons deux annonces pour vous sur, premièrement, l'avancement dans la mise en œuvre de la facilité pour la reprise et la résilience. Et je donne donc la parole à Dan pour présenter cette annonce. Dan.
Merci, Eric, and good afternoon to everybody. Indeed, the European Commission has today disbursed the pre-financing payments to Lithuania at €289 million and Spain at €9 billion, corresponding to 13% of the country's total allocated amount under the Recovery and Resilience Facility. Including today's payments, the Commission has so far disbursed €41.1 billion to 7 member states in pre-financing. That's Lithuania, Spain, Italy, Greece, Belgium, Luxembourg and Portugal. This is an important step in kick-starting the implementation of the crucial investments and reforms outlined in Member States' recovery and resilience plans, and we will expect to continue with the disbursements of pre-financing to other Member States throughout the month of August. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Dan. Et je passe maintenant la parole à Balázs pour une annonce sur notre soutien à Haïti dans les épreuves que auxquelles ce pays fait face en ce moment.
Bonjour. Donc, compte tenu des effets dévastateurs du violent tremblement de terre qui a frappé Haïti le 14 août, l'Union européenne alloue 3 millions d'euros d'aide humanitaire pour répondre aux besoins les plus urgents des communautés touchées. Donc, le financement permettra de répondre aux besoins les plus immédiats et de fournir une assistance médicale aux hôpitaux submergés au niveau local, des services d'approvisionnement en eau, des abris et des services de protection pour les communautés les plus touchées et les plus défavorisées.
Merci beaucoup, Balázs. Enfin, je voudrais vous rappeler aussi que suite au développement récent en Afghanistan, le haut représentant et vice-président de la Commission, Josep Borrell, a convoqué une réunion informelle par visioconférence des ministres des Affaires étrangères qui se tiendra cet après-midi. Le commissaire Oliver Vaheli participera aussi à cette réunion. Les participants feront le point sur la situation actuelle dans le pays. La réunion commencera, d'après mes informations, à 16 h et sera suivie par une conférence de presse du haut représentant que vous pourrez suivre sur OBS. Donc, comme d'habitude, nous vous invitons à réserver la plupart de vos questions sur ce sujet à cette conférence de presse de cet après-midi. Voilà, c'est tout pour nos annonces. Nous pouvons maintenant prendre vos questions. Yes, please.
It's Jakob Meyer from German Public Radio ARD. I have a question on rule of law in Poland. The Polish government has published a letter today saying that they will stop the current work of the disciplinary chamber, but that they will continue on rebuild the Polish justice with regard to the responsibility of the judges. I wanted to know if you got the letter, if the Commission got the letter, if you are satisfied with the content, and if not, what are you going to do? Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a question for Christian.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon. Thank you for the question.
Christian,
yes,
we cannot see you. I don't know if
you cannot see me, okay?
Let's see if you can switch on your camera. Yes.
Does it work now?
Absolutely.
Very good. Apologies for that. I guess that must be the hangover from the holidays. I can confirm that we've received the reply from the Polish authorities on time, and we are currently analyzing it. Let me remind you that on 20 July, the Commission sent a letter to Poland on two matters: the European Court of Justice's order on interim measures of 14th July and its judgment of 15th July. Poland had until 16th August to reply and confirm it will take the necessary measures to fully comply with the court's order and judgment. The Commission was clear that we will not hesitate to take the necessary action to ensure such compliance in case the Polish response would not be sufficient. Now we are, of course, analyzing the reply. We are looking into the reply before deciding about possible further steps.
Thank you. Obviously, as I'm sure you are aware, we never comment on ongoing procedures, and this is therefore the case also here with the letter that we have received from the Polish authorities. Are there other questions on this issue for us today? Please only keep your hand raised in the chat if your question relates to the rule of law issues that we have just mentioned. Mose, you have a question on this.
In fact, I was first going to ask you about Afghanistan, but as you said, we have to wait for that until the Foreign Affairs Council meeting today. So I take the opportunity to follow-up question about rule of law in Poland, because as you know, Poland recently passed a law which was approved by the President, which bans the possibility of return or compensation for Jewish property in Poland, which was stolen by the Nazis or perhaps later confiscated during the communist regime. Okay, so this is not an ongoing issue, but the law has been passed and approved in Poland. I wonder if the Commission has any comment to that, have looked into it and assessed to what extent that is compatible with rule of law principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mose. So we have moved away slightly from the letter that we mentioned in the previous question, but on which in any case we will not be able to say much more. So I pass the floor to Christian on this issue.
Yes, thank you, Mose. What I can say in a more general terms is that the Holocaust is, of course, a defining legacy of European history, and honoring its victims and descendants is our joint responsibility in Europe. It is of crucial importance also to preserve the historical memory and reflect on finding ways to restore justice. Having said that, it is primarily the competence of the member states to deal with the issues of addressing the crimes perpetrated by totalitarian regimes and their consequences, such as in the issue which is the subject matter of this legislation. So we are aware of this issue and we are following it, but it is primarily the competence of member states to deal with such issues of crimes perpetrated by totalitarian regimes.
Thank you, Christian. Are there other questions related to rule of law? Maria.
Oui, bonjour. J'espère que vous m'entendez. Maria Audrescu pour la Libre Belgique. Moi, j'ai encore quelques questions sur la question de la lettre de cette deadline du 16 août. Tout d'abord, l'arrêt de la Cour de justice de l'Union européenne exigeait la suspension de la Chambre disciplinaire de manière immédiate, si je ne me trompe pas. J'imagine que la Commission suit l'affaire au jour le jour. Donc, est-ce que vous pouvez confirmer ou pas si la Pologne s'est jusqu'à aujourd'hui conformée ou pas à cet arrêt, donc dès le lendemain ou dès le moment où il a été émis. Ensuite, la Pologne, dans la lettre qui a été aussi rendue publique, ou en tout cas un résumé, revient sur la décision qu'a donnée son tribunal constitutionnel pour dire que les arrêts de la Cour de justice de l'UE étaient incompatibles avec la constitution polonaise, ou en tout cas inconstitutionnels. Est-ce que vous rappelez à cette occasion la primauté du coup du droit européen et la nécessité pour la Pologne de se confirmer à ces arrêts? Voilà. Merci.
Merci. Sur ta deuxième question, quand tu dis est-ce que vous rappelez la nécessité pour les États membres de respecter la primauté du droit européen, je crois que cela ne nécessite aucun rappel de notre part. C'est une position de base évidente de la part de l'Union européenne que nous avons exprimée ici à de très nombreuses reprises. Quant à ta première question, tout en soulignant le fait, encore une fois, que, comme tu le sais, lorsqu'une procédure est en cours, nous nous abstenons de faire des commentaires, je repasse quand même la parole à Christian au cas où il souhaiterait rajouter quelque chose.
Oui. Merci Eric, merci Maria pour ta question. Je comprends l'intérêt sur cette question, mais je te demande aussi pour un peu de compréhension qu'on a reçu une lettre hier soir très compréhensive qu'il faut maintenant analyser et étudier dans le détail avant de faire plus de commentaires sur le contenu de cette lettre. Notre proposition, généralement, comme Eric a juste rappelé, est très très claire quant à la primauté de la loi européenne. Alors ça c'est clair, mais il faut quand même analyser la réponse de la Pologne en détail avant de donner plus de commentaires ou de décider sur des pas prochains.
Et Maria, je rajouterais qu'en ce qui concerne ta question sur le fait ou non que la chambre disciplinaire continue à fonctionner ou non, c'est peut-être un des éléments qui est dans la réponse polonaise. Donc il faut que nous analysions cela. Tu as une question de suivi?
Oui, merci. Est-ce que on peut avoir une estimation? Combien de temps est-ce que cela pourrait prendre en fait d'analyser la réponse de la Pologne? Et juste, est-ce que vous pourriez donner un petit update sur une autre affaire concernant la Pologne, mais qui est toujours liée à un arrêt de la Cour de justice de l'UE, notamment concernant une mine qui se trouve à la frontière entre la Pologne et la République tchèque. Je me souviens qu'aux dernières nouvelles, la République tchèque avait demandé des sanctions financières à ce sujet. La Commission avait aussi appelé la Pologne à se conformer à l'arrêt de la Cour de justice. Je voudrais savoir où on en est juste à l'étape, disons, judiciaire, si on veut, ou à quelle étape on en est dans ce dossier. Merci.
Sur le temps qu'il faut pour analyser la lettre, Maria, en anglais, il y a cette expression que j'aime beaucoup, « How long is a piece of string ?» Tu sais très bien que nous ne faisons jamais de commentaires sur le temps qui est nécessaire pour faire une analyse. Cela va dépendre du contenu de la lettre et des réflexions de la Commission. Tu sais que nous revenons au moment approprié vers vous une fois qu'une nouvelle étape du processus s'annonce. Et donc, il faudra simplement attendre nos annonces sur la suite des événements. En ce qui concerne ta question sur cette mine qui est la mine de Turów, effectivement, je te rappelle que c'est une procédure entre la République tchèque et la Pologne devant la Cour de justice, à laquelle s'est joint par la suite la Commission européenne, mais qui à la base concerne donc ces deux États membres. Et si tu permets, nous reviendrons vers toi ultérieurement en ce qui concerne l'état d'avancement, car je pense que cela mérite vérification de notre part. Lawrence, you have a question on rule of law.
Yes, I do. I have two questions on the rule of law. Sorry, Eric, but it's just not good enough to say how long is a piece of string and nonsense like that. As Christian noted, the ECJ had required Poland to satisfy by August the 16th its ruling of a month ago. Poland has manifestly not done so by August the 16th, regardless of what the Polish authorities are saying they will do in the coming months. And I note that the Polish authorities are also insisting that, as they were before, that the interim measures taken by the court are not applicable to them. So it is fairly simple. Are you taking off the table or keeping on the table the possibility of fining Poland for failing to do what they were ordered to do by the court? Second question for you, can you update us on what is the situation with the recovery plan assessment for Poland? I don't believe it was formally extended since August the 1st, but maybe I missed something. So where are we on that, and when will there be a decision on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. I'm afraid that we stick to what Christian has been saying previously. We are analyzing. We never take anything off the table until we have a formal decision, a formal appraisal that the situation means that we should take anything off the table from a legal point of view. For the moment, the analysis of the letter is starting, and we will revert to you once we have elements to communicate. On the national plan, we have indeed stated quite a few times that the analysis is continuing on this plan. That is the state of play for the moment, and we will there again communicate once our assessment of the plan is finished. Are there other questions for us today on the rule of law? Oui. Lionel.
Oui, ça marche. Oui, Lionel Julien Arte. Une question par rapport à cette dernière réponse, Eric. Ce qui veut dire qu'il n'y aura pas de décision sur le plan de relance tant que la lettre parvenue ce matin n'aura pas été complètement analysée?
Je pourrais avoir la parole. Encore une fois, Lionel, et tu le sais bien, on l'a déjà dit ici sur le podium, je ne sais combien de fois, et je vois d'ailleurs à ton sourire que tu le sais très bien, il y a un certain nombre de critères dans le règlement sur lesquels se base notre analyse, et c'est sur cette base-là que nous sommes en train d'effectuer l'analyse. Bien entendu, cela couvre toute une série de critères, y compris bien entendu, la bonne gestion, le bon contrôle des fonds et la bonne supervision des fonds qui sont dépensés ou investis dans le cadre de ce plan. Et c'est sur l'ensemble de ces dimensions que nous travaillons. Are there other questions for us on the rule of law today? Mose, you have another question on the rule of law.
Resilience plans, and as you said in the announcement at the beginning, the start of pre-financing to some member states. I'm thinking about the so-called rule of law mechanism, where the Commission is supposed to issue some guidelines how to apply it. And so my question is, how is that going? And connected to this, also the question whether you are aware about if the Commission already now is, let's say, examining possible cases in some of these member states which already now have received funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mose. This is an important issue on which we have already many times given you our position, but I give the floor again to Balázs. I don't think there are any developments on any specific cases, but our general position, I think, is quite clear-cut. Balázs.
Indeed. So we are in the middle of a consultation process on the guidelines. This is a process that will be running for about 10 weeks in total. We started in the middle of June, and we are intending to finish by early September. So what we did here was to draw up a set of guidelines which will guide the application of the regulation. We have shared these guidelines with the Member States and the European Parliament. So now is a time of gathering feedback, comment that we will take into account and finalize the guidelines in that light, expectedly by the early days of the autumn. That's where we are in the procedure.
Thank you very much. I see no further hands raised either here in the room or on Interaxio on the rule of law, so let us see if there are questions on other issues. Thanks, Balázs. Lily. Lily. Yes, it's working now. Hi.
Yes, hi. Thanks, Eric. I know we need to save our bigger questions on Afghanistan for later in the day, but I had a more immediate one. There was an interview published with Commissioner Gentiloni where he said that Europe should create humanitarian corridors for Afghan refugees. So I was wondering if this is something that the Commission is tabling today or is working on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, on the situation in relation to refugees and migration more generally, let me point out that there is a meeting this afternoon of the so-called Blueprint, which is a body that brings together experts or officials from the member states, as well as the EAS and agencies, and is chaired by the Commission. And this meeting that is taking place this afternoon will look at the situation in Afghanistan and the consequences of the crisis, in particular on refugee flows. So this is an issue which, of course, is being looked into at the moment, and it will certainly be discussed further in the coming days. And therefore, we need to see for the moment what the assessment is of the situation on the ground. Any other questions on Afghanistan, taking into account the fact that we have the FAC this afternoon and the press conference? Monica.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, this is Monica from the New York Times. So I have a question that touches upon Afghanistan and migration, but more in a general terms. So there was an interview with Vice President Skinas this past weekend in La Stampa, and when he was asked about a new migration crisis possibly driven by Afghanistan, he said that Europe needed to develop a more logical and Team Europe approach. And he said, we must be clear, we will only accept those who really need a protection. Those who cross borders illegally will be sent back. So my question is the following. The reality on the ground is that most of people who do get asylum in Europe arrive illegally because of the lack of or limited number of legal avenues to apply for asylum. So I wanted to ask, is this an official position of the Commission, that those that arrive in an irregular way should be sent back? And if that is the case, I mean, how, as many European countries suspended returns to Afghanistan? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass the floor to Christian.
Yes, thank you, Monica. Well, let me maybe first add a few more elements of what we're doing from our side. Eric has already mentioned the Blueprint meeting that the Commission is convening this afternoon. Commissioner Johansson will also speak today with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, to discuss the current situation in Afghanistan. And then tomorrow, in a meeting that was already scheduled of Interior Ministers to discuss Belarus, the HRVP and Commissioner Johansson will also take the occasion to brief on the latest state of play in Afghanistan, and we are also in contact with the Presidency to facilitate further discussions at political level in the coming days. So a lot of things are moving here, and speaking more specifically on your question of possible returns or people seeking could be seeking asylum in Europe. Again, Commissioner Johansson will speak with the High Commissioner for Refugees today. Our first priority is the evacuation of Afghans that have been working for EU member states. Of course, we are working on a comprehensive approach to address the current crisis in Afghanistan. And such an approach will need to include the need to provide safe and legal pathways for vulnerable people, while addressing risks of irregular migration and ensuring the management of our borders. These elements will need to be discussed at political level in the coming days. So I think there's not much more that we can give you on this at this stage.
Thank you very much, Christian. Monica, you have a follow-up question.
Yes, thanks for this. So, I mean, just to make sure I understood correctly, so there is no official position of the Commission yet. I mean, I'm just trying to understand if Vice President was speaking in his private capacity or whether he was presenting a position of the Commission when, I mean, it's a statement those who cross borders illegally will be sent back. So was that his private opinion, or was it the opinion of the Commission? Thank you.
Monica, you know very well that the decisions on returns take place in a very specific framework where the member states' responsibilities and obligations are framed and which they then apply. It's very clear when it comes to returns to Afghanistan that for the moment the situation, as we know, is extremely difficult, and therefore that this is definitely something that member states need to take into account in their decisions. Now, more generally, as you know, we have put on the table proposals for a migration and asylum pact that looks at all the dimensions of this issue, the management of the borders, of regular and irregular migration to the EU, the situation in the countries of origins, the member state decisions on asylum based on their international commitments, solidarity between the member states, etc., etc. And I think that what this crisis shows is that there is a need for member states to progress in their discussions on the adoption of this migration and asylum pact. Are there other questions for us today on Afghanistan, bearing in mind that we will leave most of the answers to the press conference? Anne.
Okay, hold on.
We can hear you. Yeah, and we can see you now.
You can hear me?
Yeah. Go.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about this. Also hangover from vacation. I will try one more time to ask about the strategy of the Commission in countering a new wave of migration from Afghanistan. There have been many calls to the EU saying you you must not repeat the faults, the mistakes from 2015. You have to talk to the neighboring countries now. So my question is, what can you offer Pakistan, Iran and Turkey in terms of supporting them to accommodate migrants and refugees, and what is the EU Commission's strategy on that? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anne. But I think that Christian really explained that we are in a process at the moment. First of all, we have a situation on the ground which is in complete flux, right? Events are unfolding as we speak. And therefore, what is extremely important at the moment is to be monitoring the situation, which is exactly what the European Commission is doing, and Commissioner Johansson is extremely active on this front. And secondly, to be discussing with the different partners involved. And this is why Christian has said that we have a meeting that will discuss this this afternoon with the member state officials. And this issue will be discussed tomorrow with the Interior Affairs Ministers of the member states in the context of the IPCR. So there is a process which is currently ongoing, and therefore we have to wait for that process to unfold before we can offer answers on the questions that you are asking, bearing in mind once again that events continue to unfold at the same time. So this is, in any case, a moving situation. And I think that it is important that we leave space for this discussion, and we will certainly have the opportunity to come back at a later point in time. Mose.
Yes, thank you again, Eric. I wanted to ask a question about Afghanistan from the very start, so now we have started to get questions about that. I have a follow-up question. As we know now, as you said, also the situation is unfolding in Afghanistan, but I think that most EU member states have already evacuated their embassy staff. And what remains to evacuate or save, I suppose, are the interpreters and the local staff which has been employed. by member states and by international health organizations, and it can be soon perhaps too late to get them out from Afghanistan. So the question is the Commission somehow assessing this situation? Will that perhaps affect the issue of how to, let's say, classify Afghanistan now after the Taliban power takeover as an unsafe country, both for that local staff and also for those Afghanistan asylum seekers which already are in Europe and maybe have to return? Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, you want to say something on this?
Thank you, Mose. I will tackle one aspect of your question. When you mentioned the evacuations, I will not be dealing with the returns and classification of Afghanistan, how safe it is for potential returns, because as we stressed several times now and in previous days, the situation is unfolding. Decisions are being prepared by the EU. Discussions are taking place at the highest levels, with the foreign ministers being one example this afternoon. But when it comes to the local staff, especially I can talk on behalf of the EU about the local Afghan staff which was working for the EU delegation on the spot. We've been engaged for some time now to make sure that we ensure their safety and security. We are working on it very intensively. This is the priority right now for us, to save people's lives, to save people who are working for the EU delegation. The same goes for the member states. Their priority is their own citizens and ensure the safety of the local population who was working for the diplomatic missions of individual member states. So we are engaged in this. This is ongoing operation. It's very demanding and challenging and very sensitive operation. And of course, due to the security reasons and security considerations, we are not sharing any operational details about numbers, whereabouts, the status. But this is the top priority right now, which is still ongoing. And when it comes to the classification of Afghanistan as a safe country, developing country, dangerous country, etc., the review of all the policies and assessments is ongoing in light of the latest developments in the country.
All right. Any other questions on this issue? Hans-Uwe.
Thank you. Good morning. I followed your explanation, your answer to Anne Gelinek. May I ask, are we in discussions with the Taliban?
Thank you. No, this is really a question now for the press conference after the Foreign Affairs Council. Hans-Uwe. Lawrence.
Hi, Peter. Do you have some sense now of the timeline for getting Afghan nationals who work with the EU out? I know that Borrell spoke to Blinken about this last night. Do we have some sense of how quickly this can be done?
Thank you, Lawrence. Indeed, High Representative Borrell had a number of contacts with his counterparts, among others the Secretary General of the NATO, US State Secretary Blinken, and the focus of these conversations, among other things, was also the issue of evacuations. This is ongoing operation. That's why I'm not going into details of this very sensitive exercise. Logistically very demanding exercise and sensitive exercise because we are talking about people's lives and people's safety. So when it comes to timelines, numbers, operational details, at this stage, for the benefit of the security and lives of these people about who we are talking about, we will not be sharing at this stage.
Thank you very much. Lawrence, you have a follow-up.
Yeah, sorry, Peter. Just to press you, I understand, and we've discussed over the last few days issues around numbers. But in terms of the timeline, is this something that I mean, it's one thing to say operationally we can't discuss that because we may be putting people at risk. My sense, a little bit more, is that we simply don't yet know how long it's going to take to do this. Is that fair?
Again, I'm not entering into speculations. I said that for some time now already we are engaged in very intense efforts, the EU, its institutions, together with member states and allies, in order to deal with this situation and to make sure that we complete this priority as soon as it gets. So many variables on the ground in Afghanistan are unknown or unpredictable. So we are operating in very difficult and evolving environment, but all the efforts are focused on getting everyone out or ensure that everyone who worked for us, everyone who is an EU citizen or was working for EU mission or missions of the EU member states is in safety. So this is the top priority, and as soon as, we aim to complement or to finalize these operations as soon as it gets under the current circumstances.
Thank you. Are there questions on other topics for us today? Nicola.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. We had a question for Peter. Any news on the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, since it's announced that the technical part of the dialogue should be organized by the end of this month, so it should be this week or the other one. So do you have any information about it, any date and the topics? Thank you.
The work at various levels on the dialogue is constantly ongoing. It doesn't have to be only a specific meeting, but there are a lot of contacts being done, as I said, at the various levels. And the expert level meeting or the meeting of the negotiators or even high-level meeting, we will always announce when and if appropriate.
Thank you. Other foreign affairs-related questions for Peter? No other issues? That is not the case. Thank you very much. Our next midday briefing will be on Thursday, but of course, we remain available to you for all your questions at any point in time. Thank you and bon appétit.